Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Anchal Makhija and welcome back to our podcast Transplant Journeys. So today, the final and last episode with Thomas Dodds. So in today's episode, we will be discussing about his recovery post-transplant, and the highlights of this episode will be his reunion with his bird families. So Thomas, are you excited to share your reunion and your journey with us?
Absolutely, yeah. Living with liver disease is no picnic. Transplant surgery itself is, again, no picnic. But the life after and the possibilities and the opportunities that are afforded those of us who get a second chance at life is absolutely priceless.
So, please tell us about your recovery immediately post transplant, and maybe you can focus on 1 to 3 months post transplant because these are a very critical and crucial period of transplant. Since you waited for many years, so how was it, and what particular things we need to take care of?
Yeah, my recovery was maybe atypical. I ended up waking up from what was almost a 14-hour surgery. I woke up a little bit early. My blood pressure dropped, and they needed to give me blood products. So they needed I guess, my attention and my approval. And so they woke me up. And then I spent a few days in surgical ICU. And then I moved to a step down ward on the transplant floor, which I ended up with no real issues. And I was released from that to, you might say, the local area because we had traveled to Cleveland. I had to stay in
Okay.
the area for about a month. So the first month I was fairly close to my transplant team. Um, the only side effect, the only complication I've ever had was that very first, you might say, 12th, 13th day. I ended up spiking a fever from a UTI thanks to the catheter. Um, and that has been the worst thing that I've had so far. Um, so I'm very thankful for an atypical recovery. Now, as life goes on, the first 3 months or so, um, you end up getting a ton of medication changes. You are taking blood draws sometimes multiple times a week if there are changes in your blood work. Um, I went back to work on week 7. So, um, I've had a fairly atypical recovery where I've, kind of thrived right from the beginning. My first client, I got to choose. I chose one around the corner from the hospital in Cleveland. So I used to travel from Pittsburgh back to Cleveland every week for a client that was just around the corner from the hospital.
Okay, so 14 hours of journey use of 14 hours of transplant surgery you said, right? What, why was it 14
Yeah.
hours? Doctor did explain to you?
Yeah, I ended up with a living donor. I think I mentioned that last time. So what happens is they have to take the liver out of me while the organ is between, you might say, the donor and the recipient. That liver gets prepped. They're already closing up the donor and taking them back to recovery. So the liver is in prep for 4.5, 5 hours or so. With me, putting the liver back into me is a very tedious procedure. It takes a while, and then due to the complications I had from having liver disease as long as I did, my spleen was still putting a back pressure on the organ, on the new organ, to the extent where they ended up having to do a splenectomy, which is they take it out. So I am now spleenless. But that's really why my surgery was much longer than a typical um, cadaver donor liver transplant.
So all's well that ends well. So you are doing good. It doesn't matter, what complications was there on that surgery table, but you are doing good, which is important. So, Thomas, please share that on how many medications you are on right now, and initially what medications you were taking, and what are the side effects you faced, and how did you cope up with them?
Shortly after transplant, transplant patients are put on a heavy load of immunosuppressive medications. I'm 10 and a half years out, and I take two of these every week, or every day, sorry. Um, so I'll show you a picture of the medications that I did take. I was off prednisone fairly quickly. I was off of the Cellcept within 3.5, 4 years, which is another immunosuppressive medication. It does have some side effects like sun sensitivity. So I tend not to go out in the sun without sunscreen. I tend to wear long sleeves, long pants, a hat, things like that. Um, and then most recently, I was taken off of Bactrim, which is a low grade um, antibiotic, which allows me not to get the infections, lung infections, things like that. So now I'm down to that one little pill. It's pretty easy to take at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Now, as to side effects, well, we all know the horrors of prednisone. Your appearance changes. You tend to have an appetite like you really don't want, especially for liver patients who got a living donor. You're growing a liver to match your size. That takes an incredible amount of energy, so you tend to eat as it is. So prednisone really amps up your eating. Um, as far as tacrolimus goes, the typical side effects are shaking of the hands, hot feet. I did get those early on when my dose was higher, but it was reduced very quickly because I was absorbing the medication fairly well. Um, so that's why I'm on a low dose of it. I don't have the shaky hands. I don't have hot hands, hot feet now, being on such a low dose and being out 10 and a half years.
So basically, once you keep on going and the years passed by, the side effects reduce. And I am observing that I'm not observing, but analyzing, and I keep talking to other people as well, that everybody is different and everybody is experiencing different side effects. So yeah, everyone will have different side effects of the medicines. So, like, since after how many years those medicines got tapered or reduced, as you shared that you are only on Tacfa, that to 1 mg. How many years it took to come to that dose?
I'm going to say that dose was pretty quick. Um, I think when I started, I was at 3.5 um, twice a day. Then it was brought down to 2.5 to 2 to 1.5 to 1. And that's where I've been probably 8 years or more. So
Great. This is good. This is good. I personally actually want this question to understand that what things you do to keep going, to get going, and what precautions we need to take in our daily routine when we come to our normal life, and what physical activities we must engage in. So please tell us a little about this.
initially, when I got home from transplant, so think a month out, 4 or 5 weeks, um, I began walking. And now I've lapsed over the years, but I tend to walk um, a mile at a time. I don't tend to walk briskly. It does wonders for you. I use it as my thinking time. So I would encourage that. You can return to fairly normal physical activity with the advice of your team. I played ice hockey before transplant as a liver patient. I played after my transplant. I had a few accidents playing after my transplant, but it's just proof that you can get back to a fairly normal, stable life. Just this past Friday, I golfed in a golf event that benefited the transplant community. So here I am. I've been cut down the middle, and I'm playing golf, which is a twisting kind of sport, which I certainly encourage everybody to check with their team to maintain a level of physical activity. Don't let the fear overtake that, and do things in moderation. I've never had a surgical or an incisional hernia, so I don't overdo it, but I don't sit at home watching life pass me by. No.
So indeed, we all have our body language to listen to, understand too. So yes, you're right. We don't have to overdo it, and we can definitely resume to our normal activities what we were doing. So recently, I was speaking to another patient and recipient of liver. He said that he indulges in skateboarding. So I was like, wow, which is amazing. So yes, we definitely can come to our normal life. So you have come to normal life and you've started engaging in other different activities. Do tell us about that. What all kind of activities you were engaging in, and please inspire us from that.
In addition to work life, there's a huge community for organ donors and organ recipients found in the transplant games community. And so you'll notice that on my chest, I have a logo of the team that I participate with here for the US or the American transplant games, Team Alleghenies. And it's a Olympic styled set of events, but an Olympic styled lifestyle where you're matched and you're paired and you commune really with people who are donors of the same organs or donor families or recipients of the same organs, different organs, same stage in life, middle aged, male, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of camaraderie there, but there's a lot of support in that. Now, the games is all about the donor, and if you ever get a chance to go to the games, go to a donor tribute session, and the donors and donor families all get one of these gold medallions, um, and the whole thing is about the donor and what is possible because of a donor, and it's worth going. In fact, the donor session is better attended than the opening ceremonies. It's better attended than the closing ceremonies. And everything we do is for the donor. You know, the, my life is a testament to the gift of a life, and so the camaraderie part though is kind of interesting. Um, I got this chain of things here. Um, this is from Cleveland, 2016, and you'll notice all these pins on the lanyard for my ID. I learned a thing or two. I initially was wearing them around like this. They cut into your neck. They do all sorts of crazy stuff to you. But I can go through all of these pins from various states, and I can think of the people who gave them to me. I traded one of our team pins for one of theirs, and I can go through and remember those people. Now, because it's transplant community, we do have a lot of people who don't come to the next games, one reason or another, but oftentimes they've passed away. And so you go looking for your friends, um, to show you that I actually learned a thing or two. Let me pull this one. This is from Salt Lake City, Utah, in 2018. So 2 years later, I got smart and I pinned them to just a little satchel bag they kind of handed out. But again,
a lot of these pins came from the very same people that I'd come to know and love from Cleveland. So 2020 with COVID had our New Jersey games kind of put on hiatus. There was a bit of a craziness with that. 2022 was San Diego. I didn't participate. I had other commitments. And then coming up in 2024 here in the U.S., we have some down in Birmingham, Alabama. But it's true. It's a real Olympic kind of styled thing. You win medals. So I have medals from the games that I've attended. My event is golf. But there are all sorts of events for people to participate in. Everything from, I think there's swimming, volleyball, bowling, basketball, racquetball, badminton, I think. There's also non-physical activities. Many of our transplant people are in wheelchairs. So there's trivia. There's darts. I think there's also Texas Hold'em poker, if I'm not mistaken. So the transplant community really comes together, and for a week, you might say every 2 years, there's thousands of us together, and it's quite remarkable.
Very, very, very inspiring. I feel like I should also go for it for the World Transplant Games. I will definitely. We have come to the last part of our segment, which is exciting for me at least. Uh, so, you met your birth families. Tell us about the reunion of your birth families. I'm sure you must have felt grateful. Please tell us exactly how it happened, how the events unfolded.
Yeah, so I decided that I was going to write a book. I was talking about writing a book about 6 months after my transplant. It's been 10 and a half years. I'm still working on it. But I decided at one point, late 2019, that if I was going to tell the world my story, I should find the lady who started it, i.e., my mother. So early January of 2020, I was in contact with what we call an angel searcher in the adoption world. That's somebody who helps find siblings and find parents and find children. They're very good at this. And so she proceeded to ask me what kind of information I had, and she would tell me if I had good information. I said, okay, I'll send you what I have. And so about 45 minutes later, she sent me what turned out to be my birth mother's profile on Facebook. Uh, so I went from having the expectation of being told, hey, you have pretty good information, to I'm pretty sure this is your mother. So I did my own, to shorten the story, I did my own investigative work. And sure enough, I came to the conclusion that yes, this is probably my mother. So I found a few of her friends on Facebook that had similar names. My mother was married. Her name had changed, but I found people with the same familial name that she had on my birth certificate. And I reached out to them. Two ended up being, you might say, a distant relative, not an immediate relative. And I did a group message on Facebook. And the third one on that list was, it turns out to be my mother's younger sister. So my aunt. And the story is told to me that she called my mother right away and said, well, I hope you're sitting down because your son is alive and he's looking for you. See, my mother was given the prognosis that I might not last till I was 5. So every day for 46 and a half years, she wondered. So transplant allows me to come back to her. So I've spent 3.5 years, building a relationship with my mother, and she proceeded to start to tell me about my father. And so having that information, I started looking up. I knew he had passed away. She told me that very early on, and I proceeded to look up the people that were named in his obituary, and I found I found half siblings. We don't use the term half, but so I found brother and sisters that are mine. I bear to some degree family resemblance. So it's kind of interesting. For the first time in almost 50 years, I actually look like somebody. Um, it's interesting from a find your roots perspective, figure out who you are. I've always been a fairly confident person. Well, my world has been changed, to say the least, on that front. So I proceeded to reach out to my siblings, and um, they had a you might say a family conference to figure out if I was who I really said I was. And here's the kicker: they found the NBC News article that had my sister and I in it, and they reached out to my donor sister, and she confirmed my information, and along with other information that I myself confirmed, they they accepted me as really who I am. So not only is my sister my donor, she's also I'd say my backup on information, and she's the one that's part and parcel instrumental yet again in helping me out of a bind. So, yeah, and it's been very good. I only found my siblings back in April, so we're here at the end of July, and so it hasn't been all of that long. I've been up to visit once. We're going back next week.
So tying some loose ends, so interesting and amazing, amazing story. And congratulations that you found your both siblings and your mother,
Thank
and
you.
have a you know. You also told that you're going to meet them soon, so all the best for that.
Thank you.
So with this, we have come to the end of our episode, or we can say the podcast series with Thomas Dodds. 3 episodes with Thomas Dodds. It was amazing, Thomas, to have you, to hear your story, and to see what challenges you faced, but you came strong. The best part for me was the World Transplant Games and those medals and those spins from those people. So it was amazing to have you on a podcast, that too as a first guest. How was the experience for you?
Well, I'm going to recommend to all your future guests that they actually become guests. It's been very
Thank
fun
you so
working with
much.
you, and I wish you
Thank
the
you so
best. And I wish your podcast the best.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching this podcast series. Please stay tuned for more such guests.